Hey, Brennan here, lead game designer for Reinforcements. Today we're going to look at how we make the miniatures for the Mythic edition of Reinforcements on this guy right here. But before we get to that, there's a lot of work we need to do. We need to set up the 3D files, that way we can send it to the printer, and that way the printer can print out the miniatures. So let's go show you how that gets done. Alright, so here we are in Blender. This is the 3D software that I use to create the miniatures. It is completely free to use, so if you want to get into 3D modeling, animation, stuff like that, this is a great software to do so. And the first thing we got to do is create a new file, so let's do that. Alright, so now that we have a new file open, you see we have this little cube here, and we can rotate in a 3D space to view the cube. And pretty much the basics of 3D modeling is you get these little points of the cube here and you can move them in 3D space to create the shape that you want, and you can even go ahead and extrude faces outwards like this and like that and like that. And you do little steps like this over and over again in order to create the model itself. Now obviously this is not looking like anything, but with some practice and lots of time, you eventually get to something like this. Now, this isn't a Blender tutorial, so I'm not going to go into the details about how I made the little shapes and the swords and the arrows and the hero of the people himself, but there are plenty of resources on YouTube to look at, so you can watch those to learn how to do something like this. But this process itself takes a total of about, I would say 15 hours, maybe more. You lose track of time with the amount of days you work on it, but over the course of, I would say 2 weeks, I worked on this on and off and created this one model here. We are almost ready to 3D print. Now we have to bring this into another program. That way we can actually set up the settings for the print and all that good stuff. So let's head over there. Alright, here we are in another software. This is Box. This is what we're going to use to print out our 3D prints here. And basically what we have to do here now is support our model. So the way this works is, you can see as I scroll through this here, the model is being built up layer by layer, and that's actually how the model prints out on the printer. We have to support the model because if you look here, there's this little thing right here that's floating in space. If we don't put a support right there, that's actually not going to print. It's got to be built from something. So basically the way we do that is we go to this option right here, and then from there what we have to do is go through and manually put in these little points like that. And so now when this prints up, there's actually a support, and that can actually print. Now there is an easy way to do this. You can just go ahead and hit this all button, and that'll actually make supports for you, but it's not perfect, and you end up getting these weird things like this little guy right here. You end up having supports that are actually touching the top of the model. So this is a good start, but this is nowhere near perfect. So we're gonna have to take some time and actually clean this up. Alright, so this is our model fully supported here. As you can see, there's lots of crazy things going on. Don't worry, it might not make sense to you, but it is necessary for the model to print correctly. With multiple prints and fixing and revising the supports for things that don't work, in total this process takes maybe like 3 to 5 hours. So it is a lengthy process, but once you get it right, you don't have to worry about doing it again. So now that the model is fully supported, we're going to go ahead and hit this slice button. And basically what this is going to do is it's going to cut up the model into pieces or layers. So if you see here, as we scroll through, these are all the individual layers that the UV screen is going to project onto the uncured resin, and it's going to harden that resin layer by layer by layer. And as the model lifts up and up and up and up and up and up and up, eventually you're going to get this model right here. And you can see here, this is the estimate time, 3 hours 27 minutes that it's going to take to actually print the model. So we're going to save this out, we're going to put it on a flash drive, and then head over to the printer. And just to be safe, we are going to be wearing a mask and gloves while we're working with our 3D printer today, because the resin that we're using is actually toxic. And it can harm you if you breathe in the fumes or if you decide to touch the resin with your bare hands. So we will be very cautious while we do so, and we're not going to be touching the model until it's completely cured under UV light. So let's get to it. Alright, so the resin in here is actually a couple days old, so we're going to go ahead and take this out. We're going to filter it through the funnel there. We're going to clean up the vat on the bottom, make sure there's no particles or anything. Then we're going to get the new resin in and we'll begin our prints. This right here is 99% isopropyl alcohol, so we're going to be using this in the vat to clean out all the resin. Alright, so I got the resin here. We're going to go ahead and shake it up a bit, that way everything's mixed together, and we'll pour it in and start the print. Alright, so our print has finished, and surprisingly, it looks like it actually printed out pretty perfect. So we're going to go ahead and head over to this station here. This is the wash and cure station. We're going to go ahead and wash off all that excess resin and get this cleaned up a little bit. So we'll set this up here. Alright, so now that the model is cleaned, we're going to be taking off these little tiny supports here. The process itself is a little tedious, but we'll get through it. We just got to take our time. Alright. Alright, so as you can see, the model here came out really good. All the supports came off nicely, nothing broke off, which is always a plus. So now we're going to head over to the cure station, and we're going to hit it with some UV light so that it gets nice and hard and we don't have any more of that toxic resin. Alright, the model is done, and we have a completely hardened and cured miniature. Alright, so we have our freshly printed miniature right here, and this looks perfect. We have our base here, so all we have to do right now is just sand the bottom down a bit and glue it onto the base. Even though this was perfect, that doesn't mean they all will be. For example, this right here. This was the first attempt at the model, and as you can see, a lot of the pieces just snapped off. So I took this and scaled everything up and got to this here, but even still, the arrows were still like falling off and breaking off. I just wasn't getting the results or the looks I wanted. The shield was very flimsy back here. And with this one, design-wise is perfect, but as you can see, his arm kind of just didn't print correctly, as well as the back of the sword. Each of these prints took about 4 hours until I got to this one here. And between each of these prints, I had to pretty much go back into the software on the computer, redo all the supports for every single one of these and make adjustments to the scale and size of the models as well. So all in all, it was a long process to get to this. That's it. That's how you make the miniatures for the Mythic edition of Reinforcements. As you can see, it's a very tedious process and the materials to make them are very expensive, but we think it's worth it. We think these things look awesome and we can't wait for a select few of you to get your hands on them. Now, let's see, that's 4 for each box, and then we're doing 25 boxes. So now I just gotta do that 99 more times. Should be fun.